was a soldier back when he was alive. Al Simmons didn't need magic. And now, with little magic to spare, he podcasts the way he was trained to podcast. Dirty.
What's happening, Hellspawn? This is your co-host, George Marston, pronouns they, them, she, her. I'm here, as always, with
Pierce Lyden, pronouns they, them.
And this
How you doing?
This is Spawnography, Pierce. And I'm doing great because we're about to talk about a very special one-shot, which is the Spawn Batman crossover.
I was going to get sweatier with podcasts this time and call it a Spawn Bats, but I didn't think that would translate very well.
No, I don't think it did. But nice try. You know what? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky,
Michael Scott,
George Marston. So
Todd McFarlane.
Yeah, here we go. The great one, already invoking the legacy of one of the greatest hockey players of all time.
And former Edmonton Oilers owner, Todd McFarlane. So fun thing that I learned so Todd McFarlane was a part owner of the Edmonton Oilers. He's a huge sports guy. We've covered this. He's the comics jock.
Yeah.
He designed one of the Oilers jerseys.
That's dope.
And now that I know that,
chains on it,
it almost does. It has a drop of oil in a gear.
That's kind of dope, actually.
And it's now been long enough that they brought it back. Adidas did a bunch of retro reverse jerseys where they would
I want a Todd McFarlane.
I kind of do too. I
played hockey growing up. Pierce and I both played a little bit of hockey. I played roller hockey. I think you did just a little bit. Yeah.
Did I. And I'm currently a roller hockey coach.
Yeah.
So shout out to the black team.
Pierce, also comics jock.
Very true, actually. Punk comics jock is me. I think maybe that's also partly why I like Todd.
It's that amalgam spirit.
It's a kindred spirit for sure.
Yeah.
For certain.
So this is an interesting one shot written, of course, by Frank Miller of the goddamn Batman fame, and it comes through in this issue, and drawn by Todd McFarlane. We'll get into the full credits. I'm just bringing them up specifically because that's the marquee here. It's Todd doing Batman, I think for the first time in a Batman title. I could be totally wrong.
I think that's wrong because there's that before he got his Spider-Man.
You're right.
He went to DC
and he was doing Infinity Inc. and all that, and I think he did do some Batman.
But he wrote and drew. He inked himself in an issue of Batman or an issue of Detective Comics.
Makes sense.
And then he showed it to his Spider-Man editor and was like, "See, I could do it all."
That's fantastic. Well, no, what I'm thinking is that it's his first DC work after the founding of Image and after Spider-Man and all that. So am I correct about that?
I mean, this one's interesting. This is technically an Image Comics joint.
It is, but it's him drawing a DC character.
True. There is also a DC Comics Batman Spawn what is it?
War Devil?
War Devil, that's what it is. War Devil. That we will not be covering because it is not in canon for Spawn at all.
Right.
This is vaguely in canon for Spawn. It's
also an interesting oddity at the very least.
I'm going to put this out here. This will be, we're 10 or 11 episodes in at this point. We're not going to cover everything. Just because Spawn appears doesn't mean we're going to cover it. However, when we have guests on the show, if they really want to cover something, or we think it would be fun to cover like Spawn showing up in Sonic Adventures, then yes.
We're not ruling it out. We're not
we're
ruling
not
it out.
ruling it out.
We're also not making it a rule. The main thing we are going to guarantee is that we're going to read every issue of Spawn, and we're going to try to read every single issue and tie-in that is directly connected to that main story.
Yes, exactly. So stuff that is connected but not super connected. We've talked about it. Youngblood. We're not going to cover Youngblood.
Yeah.
We can summarize what happens in Youngblood. Similarly, there's a few issues of Curse of the Spawn that we don't really need to cover. They can be explained in about 2 sentences. But there is other stuff in Curse of the Spawn that we will cover. So anyway, just a little teaser for the future.
Yeah.
I will say, at the time we're recording this, the show has been out for a little bit. So that's cool.
Yeah.
And thanks for everybody that's been listening.
Absolutely.
We banked quite a few episodes, so it'll sound like we're ignoring the fact that you've been listening, but it's been really, really cool. And shout out to all the Spawn communities on Reddit and Facebook that I've been promoting the show in. Everybody's been really, really cool. It's been really great.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We've had a few folks reach out with some very kind words, and we are very happy to connect with some other Spawn fans. It's a really cool comic to be talking about, and there's a lot of really cool folks that you can meet in this community, and we really appreciate the support we've gotten.
And also I will say the creativity of the Spawn community, because in addition to the comic, it's very toy focused.
I've had a few Spawn discussions in some toy groups lately. I won't out myself.
But I just seeing people's customs and things that they're doing, recreations of covers with action figures, really, really cool. And also some good discussion about the character itself. I did say, somebody asked, how do we make Spawn more popular in the mainstream? And I said, you start a podcast about it. I did get downvoted. So sorry.
Wow. Wow, you've damned yourself to the hell of potentially negative karma forever.
Yeah,
but
well,
they're wrong. That's how we're going to do it. We're going to blow it up. So I will say we're working on our format. We're working through how we're covering everything and the way we get into these issues. And we really appreciate everybody's patience as well as we're finding our way through this. Just like Todd McFarlane was finding his way through creating Spawn back in the early 90s and the halcyon days of the birth of Image Comics and the start of this beautiful franchise.
For sure. All right, so I'm going to get into the credits page. This is Spawn Batman. The first thing after the title is Spawn versus Batman is a companion piece to DC Comics' The Dark Knight Returns. It does not represent current DC continuity.
But does that mean it isn't DKR continuity? Because that would make, first off, that makes perfect sense. But second off, like, the implications, as Dennis Reynolds would say.
We're going to circle back to that.
Yeah, we'll circle back
in a moment.
We're in the credits. I'm going to pause on that, put a pin in it.
Writer, Frank Miller. Artist, Todd McFarlane. Letterer, Tom Warzikowski. Colorist, Steve Olive. Computer colors by Oli Optics, who is Tracy Anderson, Kathy Ennis, Christ Wolf, which is the coolest name of all time, Patty Stratton Jordan, Kirk Mobert, Abel Mountain, Leah Rude, Marie St. Clair, Mo Sampson, Quinn Suplee, Robin Robertson, William Zindel, Stacy Cox, and then for Image Comics, Executive Director Larry Marder, Publisher Tony Libido, Spawn, created by Todd McFarlane, Batman, created by Bob Kane, little asterisk for 2024, with Bill Finger. That's how they do it now.
So just want to say real quick, as a quick note, if any faith-based metalcore bands are looking for a name, Christ Wolf is right there. Boy,
it's crazy that that's not a Metal Gear Solid character already, or a Christian metalcore band,
or a character from a David Cronenberg movie. Everybody in David Cronenberg movies is like, my name's Doug Plyfe. I'm a X-ray salesman from up in Etowah. Anyway, I'm ready for this, Pierce. These people, I don't know if they can see it or not, but I've got 2 gigantic waters here. One of them is sparkling and one of them is flat. And that's a lot like this comic. There are a few bits that are sparkling. A lot of it is flat, but at the end, it's really just a bunch of fucking water.
Yeah. So let's circle back to the Dark Knight Returns of it all,
Yeah.
because I think that's really important. Reading this comic, I was like, um, Frank Miller is Todd McFarlane's favorite writer.
He's a lot of people's favorite writer.
I, yeah, and especially at the time. And I understand why. And having recently reread Returns and being a Strikes Again defender, and then it's crazy they never wrote another Batman comic after that. I get it, kinda. I mean, for me, Frank Miller's peak is still Daredevil. I think his Daredevil stuff's really great. But I also think that the Marvel universe is a little bit more textured than raw Frank Miller, if that makes sense.
It does. Now, here's the thing. Yes, it does. This script reads, I couldn't help but read it in like Frank Miller voice, okay? You little jerk. Like it sounds like it was dictated by the mean uncle in Home Alone. Like, I will go ahead and say I have no strong opinion about the Dark Knight Strikes Again, or whatever the fuck, the second one. I think
That's
that
it.
it's maligned for its art in a way that it probably shouldn't be.
I think that's the best part of it.
I think God bless an artist who takes a swing, especially at this point in my comics reading journey. Again, I admire an artist who takes a swing. I have never really been a fan of The Dark Knight Returns, never been a fan of the goddamn Batman, the, all-star Batman and Bruce Robin, whatever the fuck.
Nobody's a fan of All-Star Batman and Robin, to be fair.
It's not good. No, it's not. So I am not a Frank Miller fan. I am not a Frank Miller apologist. Not that you are, but some are. I am not. I'm a little bewildered by the industry's ongoing love affair and obsession with one reactionary crank comic from 1980, whatever the fuck, that for my entire life essentially has been what other creators, many other creators, not all, but many other creators across media into films say that they're trying to capture, is a Batman that I find flawed in a way that I don't, flawed from a storytelling perspective, not flawed from a feet of clay perspective. It's just not for me. So I'm going to say that at the start of this. I'm not going to harp on how much I dislike Frank Miller's Batman too much. I'll try to talk more about this version of it in this comic. But I think it's notable to say this is not selling me on Frank Miller's Batman at all.
If I read this and I was a Batman fan, it also wouldn't sell me on Spawn.
I was about to say it's barely selling me on Todd McFarlane's Spawn.
And I actually think that slightly from an art perspective too. I think that we're starting to enter this weird era of comics where computer coloring is becoming a new thing.
After Pioneer's Malibu Comics and the Ultraverse.
But it's not something that everybody has a full handle on yet. Which isn't to say that it wasn't already, like Spawn isn't already computer colored. We do know that it is. However, the regular Spawn book, it's a little flatter in a lot of places, and that goes a really long way.
It's a strange, making it work. Some of the choices in the art here are very strange. Some of them are between both the line art and the coloring. I agree. Real quick, I just want to note the very back page of the comic does have a dedication. I'm reading from the original physical comic here. It says, in memory of Jack Kirby, 1917 to 1994.
He had recently died at that
soul.
point.
Yes, and it's signed by Frank Miller and Todd McFarlane, and it has a dedication. Jack Kirby was the greatest artist in the history of comics. This effort is dedicated with respect to the finest talent any of us have ever witnessed. And I can't say I disagree. I love that dedication because Jack Kirby, to me, is the platonic ideal of a comic book creator. Whether you fancy his style or his prose or whatever, now, whether you even are able to appreciate it in a modern context, I think the visionary talent that he was and the raw ability to create comics that he had was incredible. So that's the end of my Kirby spiel, but I just really appreciated that dedication. Since we often talk about those dedications, I thought I'd throw that in.
I'm a little sad that it wasn't in the front. I know we've already had an issue that was dedicated to Jack, and that was the very first issue of Spawn.
Yeah.
But I do like, I've said this before, I'll say it 1,000 times in this show. I like Todd sort of recognizing what came before
I do.
and sort of he's not necessarily updating exactly what they did. You know, it's not like Todd's like clamoring for Fantastic Four, you
No.
know, but or even doing anything that's close to it. But the fact that he has such reverence for the history of it all, I do think that's a little bit of the jock in him.
Yeah.
It's a sports thing.
It's
It's,
exactly. It's a
you know,
dynasty, a legacy, a team that
yeah.
lasts forever. I think that's great because honestly, I think if you're going to be a comics jock, that's a beautiful way to do it. And again, one thing I do want to note, it's a cardstock cover and it's in place of an ad. They did that in place of any kind of an ad.
Mm.
There are no ads in the comic, I don't think, at all. They might have something at the
I don't think there are.
There are a lot of pinups in the back, which we'll get to. But yeah, so anyway, just noting that. Oh, also, I want to say I was looking at some old X-Men comics and noticing Tom Warzakowski's name in there and appreciating, again, how good of a letterer he is. He'll get some shining moments in this. We'll try to breeze through pretty quick because honestly, the funny thing about this story to me is that it's almost exactly the plot of the last issue.
Now, do you think that's because knowing that Orzechowski had to write 19 and 20 as a fill-in?
I have a theory, and I think you'll agree with me, Pierce.
Shoot.
So at the end of the 2-part Houdini story, which was our last episode, we're not going to try and rehash the weird sequencing of the issues chronologically. We're reading them story order. At the end of the Houdini saga, he says, what was it, a guy in black or a bloke in black? He had an encounter with a bloke in black or something.
I think he's actually gonna say that at the beginning of 21.
Right, that's right. He's gonna refer back to this. I think that Todd McFarlane gave Tom Warzakowski the plot of this Frank Miller Batman, Spawn Batman crossover, legitimately, and said, write a story that hits these same beats. And that way, if we ever need to refer back to anything that happens in Spawn Batman that is technically out of continuity, we can pin it on this Houdini, down to his cape, which has a moment at the end of this story. So we'll I'm going to give the very quick TLDR. In the Houdini story, Harry Houdini visits Spawn from the past via a dimension of sort of Lovecraftian non-Euclidean beings that are sort of in between heaven and hell.
That part's actually pretty cool.
It's kind of interesting. It's fine. He guides Spawn through a lesson in magic that includes Spawn recognizing a former Soviet agent who he was once assigned to kill, who then tries to set off a nuclear warhead in New York, which is then teleported away by Harry Houdini's magic into this nightmare dimension where it wrecks the place.
Right.
This Frank Miller, Todd McFarlane Batman story is almost exactly that, except there's no non-Euclidean weirdos. It's just Batman going to New York because there are sort of Ed 209 style, like RoboCop creatures, mechs with human heads that he traces back to Spawn's alley. While there, he and Spawn encounter a former Soviet agent who is brainwashing people at a seminar, who then tries to set off a nuclear warhead, which is foiled by Spawn and Batman, during which time Spawn tugs on Batman's cape and Batman says, "Don't touch my cape." In the end of the Houdini story, Spawn winds up with Houdini's cape, and there's a moment where he's talking about touching his cape. I legitimately think that's why Tom Warzakowski is credited as the co-writer on that issue, because Todd McFarlane tasked him with making sure that issue would line up with any plot beats from Spawn Batman. Now that's a fan theory, let's say. That's speculation. But given the similarity of those major beats, I don't think it's out of the question. Pierce, I've talked for so long. Please.
Fan theories famously always right.
Well, yeah, of course.
But also, so this is one of those things, it's a mystery, but I don't know. Theoretically, we could talk to Tom Warzakowski or Todd at some point. And I would like, it's one of the things, I've said it a few times already, like, oh, a thing I'd love to ask Todd. I would love to ask him that too. Especially, so lawsuit wise, where are we? Has one even started yet? I think we're still too early for a lawsuit, right?
Yeah, I think that's a few years out because
down
it's
the
a
line.
few years into the toy sales. When the toy sales are really booming. That's
right.
when.
So,
and also when the TV animated series starts airing.
Animated series starts 95.
I think so.
Yeah, because it's still. I know that
I could double check that, but
Eric Radomski is the kind of background animator for Batman animated series, and he works on Spawn.
Right.
So yeah.
A lot of folks from Batman the Animated Series, I think, did.
It's weird that like people from a good show ended up making a good show.
Yeah. And that show also, I just watched, I'm going to go ahead and shout out, I watched a Toy Galaxy video on it that went up a little while ago. Love Toy Galaxy, great videos on YouTube. Everybody knows who they are. But also, great history of that animated series. Some interesting stuff that I didn't know, and I thought it was very cool.
I have not watched that yet. It keeps popping up for me, but I love Toy Galaxy also.
Great stuff.
Shout out to Toy Galaxy.
Shout out to Toy Galaxy. Friends of the pod.
Well,
one-sided friends of the pod.
Parasocial relationship with the pod.
No, I watched them a lot.
Editor Pierce here. We mean the wonderful YouTube channel Secret Galaxy, not Toy Galaxy. Sorry, Dan Larson. Come on the pod. Anyway, now back to your regularly scheduled Spawnography.
I also want to say, if that is what happened, I don't think that's bad or wrong. I think that's actually kind of fucking cool. I think that's actually makes me like the Houdini story a little bit more, even though I really don't like either of these stories.
Interestingly, if it kind of shows a little bit of foresight if that is the case, because then Todd should have had somebody write like a Dark Ages Spawn before Neil's written an Angel in before Angela. You know what I mean? Like just kind of covered all of his bases. It also
might have had something, maybe that has something to do with why the issues are out of order to correspond with certain ideas. I don't know. I have no idea about that actually factually. But I will say that is a more interesting idea in itself than anything that's actually on the page in this fucking comic.
Batman. So let's get into Batman crossovers. I think that that's something important to start with. Obviously, Spawn's already had a crossover because of Cerebus, but that one was kind of an exercise, right? That was a metaphor,
right?
And also, we don't know. He was dreaming, or he was asleep, or he was in another dimension. It doesn't really matter. Batman gets a lot of crossover, especially now, because I think Batman he's one of the characters that in all of fiction, you can kind of put him in any setting and he works.
Yeah, that's why Elseworlds really works and from the start, because Gotham by Gaslight makes perfect sense. It's putting him in a setting of gothic kind of intrigue that he was drawing on in the first place. So that's what's really interesting about Batman. I think that's what Frank Miller and Todd McFarlane probably enjoy about Batman in a lot of ways. When you see how Frank Miller. I almost said Tom McFiller. Sometimes my mouth really wants me to stutter through some stuff. So I think that's maybe informed some of how Frank Miller has even approached his work on Batman. But
you also get to see that, and again, the toyetic nature of Batman is a huge influence on Spawn. And Spawn is also a character where you can have medieval Spawn, gunslinger Spawn.
Absolutely.
Fucking Monolith is just Hulk Spawn, like
in the late 90s and early 2000s, if you were shopping at, toy stores or department stores with toys in them, you were seeing those Legends of the Dark Knight and Elseworlds Batman figures on the shelf right next to the Spawn figure that was kind of embodying a lot of the same archetypes, which that's looking back, boy, we sure had some really cool stuff on the shelves back then. Just I'm a toy lover, so
Sam.
Yeah.
Sam, that's a pandemic addition to my personality.
Boy, ever since I was the tiniest little infant, my parents were putting things in my hands and telling me they were special, and that didn't form any kind of weird emotional bonds between me and inanimate objects or anything at all, and it didn't inform a 40-year-long love of action figures. So let's get into this real quick. I want to say there's a lot of narration. It's all built around this hard-boiled narration. Honestly, especially the second page, this narration reads like Iron Maiden lyrics. And for once in my life, I mean that in a very negative way. Like, sincerely, you could almost read it in a cadence. Musty air sucked into lungs filled with fire, blood surging from heart to shoulder and streaming hotly down his arm. What's happening here is that Batman, I think, has been shot, or he's on the run. Yes, he's on the run for a thing that blasted him.
Did he get his arm broken?
Yeah, I think it dislocated maybe.
Yeah.
Batman takes a Wolverine level fucking pummeling through this whole thing. Like, I know that's one of the famous images of Dark Knight Returns is Batman all beat to fuck. And they're not shy about letting him, exactly. They're not shy about letting y'all,
the visual medium.
Yeah. Pierce hunched over with their arms all crunched in. Like that famous drawing of Frank Miller that's trying to fit in a certain page, which honestly, I do have a soft spot for that one. My friend's older brother, when I was a little kid, had that tacked to his wall. Anyway, so yeah, it's this Ed 209 style giant robot. It's facing Batman. He references Year One, which I think is kind of fun. I actually do like Batman Year One. Probably my favorite Frank Miller Batman story. He says, no hesitation, since Year One, Batman is known. When there is no defense, attack. I want to say something else here about the art. Todd McFarlane does a lot of work to avoid drawing Batman's face. And it starts to feel like, he does draw it in some places, but it starts to feel like DC was like, you can do Batman, but not the face. Which that can't be the case. Which is
kind of crazy because he only has half a face.
Right. I mean, that can't be the case. But it does also start to feel like when Todd McFarlane was getting down to the deadlines, he stopped inking Batman's face. He just started blacking it out. Is what
there's a good chance. We do know that this was delayed because of the fill-in arc that we got about Harry Houdini.
Harry Houdini.
Creative sentence.
Yeah.
The thing is, in the opening pages, I mean, that first image of Batman, I kind of love.
It's not bad.
It does all the things that Todd loves to do. It's got an insane cape that makes no sense. It's got a lot of planes where you have that pipe kind of in the foreground. Mm-hmm. It's great. It's so cool. I don't know why we can't see his whole face.
It has that Spawn eyes and teeth and nothing else.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe to draw a parallel between them on some level. Like, I think drawing an artistic parallel between the two creatures of the night.
think it also, though, has the Adam West eyebrows.
It does.
And that rules.
That's great. Todd McFarlane does not know where the fuck Batman's nose ends or where his eyes are. His eyes are often down near his jaw. Like, when you can see just his eyes, when he draws the cowl, the beak is like long and like almost bird-like.
Notably, there's no editor on this book.
What?
Who
could tell by reading it?
But somebody at DC had to be like, nah, you got to black his face out because you have no idea how his mask works.
Yeah, maybe so. I think, there's some panels where it really works when they're here in the Batcave. So Batman retrieves a human head that's somehow sort of still alive from this giant, I keep referencing Ed 209, but that's kind of what it looks like. And Frank Miller did write a draft, I think the original draft of RoboCop 2. So
2. Yep.
Yeah. In which I think RoboCop 2 is actually what it's called in RoboCop 2. the big giant robot with Gatling gun arms.
Yeah.
Ed 209 in the first one, but anyway, it seems like the same kind of like creature archetype, and it's a giant robot with a human head that's a bum that Batman tracks the head back to being one of the affectionately named bums from Spawn's alley.
Yeah.
While we're in the Batcave, I think he's got this one weird slouchy image.
It's my favorite panel in the whole book.
It's almost very Kelly Jones or like Sam Keith kind of, in a way that I kind of have some affection for. His Alfred's also pretty good.
There's a thing about Todd where when he's really cartooning,
Yeah.
you know, I am so there for it, and I'm loving what he's doing. And because we sort of know about him that he is such a study,
Mm-hmm.
right, of other artists, of like what they're doing, things that work. I guess, what's the Batman comics that are coming out at this time? Is this a little bit before Nightfall?
Probably around that time. So you were getting a lot of Kelly Jones Batman too.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, I don't think you're wrong that he would just be like, oh, I'm going to throw one of these in there because he just likes drawing. I mean, that's a very Jim Steranko thing to do, is to just draw one thing in a certain style because you just want to have it that way. Not that he, created or is the only one for that, but in superhero comics, he comes to mind. I also think in this Batcave scene in particular, you can see, I almost want to say, how Greg Capullo drawing and being inked by Todd McFarlane for so many years led to his depiction of Batman. Gives me a little more affection for his depiction of Batman, which I've sometimes been lukewarm on.
I'm definitely a Snyder Capullo Batman defender. I do think it's got a couple arcs that don't work quite as well, but I think on the whole, it might be the best book in the New 52.
I would have a hard time arguing that. Yeah.
There's at least it is the longest running in terms of solid creative team.
One that fans really responded to. There were a couple years where when I was covering conventions, I was covering a lot of cons, and those panels were just packed. Like, Greg Capullo would run down the aisles like a wrestler or a rock star, high-fiving people. Like, that's a cliche, like a rock star. But he would it would be like that, and he would do the devil hands and everything. He's a nice guy. Great fellows. Nothing bad to say in the world about Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. Fans absolutely loved that Batman. They responded to it in a strong emotional way, and there's got to be something to that.
Anyway, this hunch over Batman is my favorite one. This scene with Alfred is my favorite writing in the whole.
It's very
issue.
It's very like David Mamet in a way, where they're just pattering over each other.
Love it. And also, so this is what I have so many theories about this book, because I'm like, all right, one, I think Frank Miller, kind of like his last issue of Spawn, Spawn number 11, where we were like,
part of the Coco Swiss,
where we were like, what is he doing here? What is this plot? It's kind of nothing. He's just writing pages to write pages. This plot kind of doesn't matter. And he's not really writing Spawn in any sort of characterization that we recognize. I think similarly here, he's just making fun of himself a little bit.
Right.
And he's also making fun of what Spawn is.
It is a little bit self-parody in a way. There's this one panel where Batman's face is just in shadow and he's got that Spawn eyes and teeth effect. Alfred has said, they say chamomile tea is sure to prevent nightmares, even the self-inflicted variety. And Batman snarls, I don't get nightmares. I give them. And it does feel like someone doing the Mad Magazine version of a Frank Miller Batman comic.
100%. And that's what I mean. And then the follow-up line is, no need for punchlines, sir. You're among friends.
Yeah, it's... I don't hate the way he draws, and I don't hate the way he writes Alfred here.
It's kind of animated series, Alfred.
Yeah, it is in a way. It's very much that like core iconic, like we know this Alfred very well.
Yeah.
And again, especially that panel where he's saying, chamomile prevents nightmares. Very Greg Capullo Alfred face to me. What I was looking at is that Eddie Campbell, who drew From Hell, also had a long-running character named Bacchus in the 90s. And I'm wondering if the bum from Spawn's Alley being named Louis Bacchus is some sort of a reference or homage to that, because that's just the kind of thing that Todd McFarlane probably would convince Frank Miller. Anyway, that's it. He's a Soviet cyborg, and we're learning about this character, Margaret Love, founder and president of Heal the World, which is a foundation. We don't know exactly what it does as a charity. What we'll learn later is that Margaret Love is really, I can't remember her name, but it's literally like Soviet Russian Kanov or some like very like stereotypical Russian name. She is a dirty fucking commie. And she used to dress like a Nazi, even though she was a commie, which is bad. And she did experiments to remove the free will of all the people. And knowing who Frank Miller is, I just have to say, I don't think that's subtle.
Yeah. I don't really have a lot. I don't have a ton to say here because we know about Miller's conservative streak, to put it kindly.
Yeah. I mean, we all know about the whole deal. Holy Terror.
I will say though,
politics. They go back to Dark Knight Returns. They do. They're on the page.
Well, the thing though about Dark Knight Returns though is there's some change after Dark Knight Returns. I think that Dark Knight Returns is actually fairly lefty.
Oh man, I don't know. I tried to read it a few months ago and it felt like it was written by Rudy Giuliani.
No, but consider this, right? One, the president at the time is Ronald Reagan. It is a pretty anti-Reagan comic.
I mean, that's fair. It's anti-government, but like the politics of Batman reads like Travis Bickle in that, which I love Taxi Driver, but like he's got a very much like
not aspirational.
No, it's absolutely not. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I guess that's what I mean though, is that like Dark Knight Returns, because of where it lands in US history, it lands in 1986. We're still at Frank Miller kind of being hot shit in comics, and he's still relatively young, the idea of Superman as this sort of overarching superpower of like some sort of fascist regime.
Right. Well, turns him back into an Ubermensch kind of Superman.
Right.
I get it. No, I don't. Yeah, no, I get it. It just, yeah.
But a switch gets flipped at some point.
Well, I know he has said publicly that he responded very strongly to the events of September 11th, 2001. If you know what happened on that day, please write in and let us know. I haven't done the research. I know that he had a very strong reaction to some event that happened that day. You're right. In the early 90s, I think maybe he just starts getting more hard-boiled when he starts writing Sin City. I don't think that people are their work, but his writing starts to take on a more hard-boiled kind of grizzled tone even than it had before, because that's what he's writing towards.
I don't think that people take on, like, I don't think that whatever characters you're writing are who you are.
No, I don't think so. I was just saying, like, I guess agreeing that, like, you can tell that sensibility is kind of getting meaner.
Fair. No, absolutely.
This 2-page spread is really cool.
Actually, hold on. One thing that's really interesting though is that a thing that we've talked about a lot is that Todd feels fairly apolitical.
Yes.
And so to kind of pair him with a writer who does seem to have some sort of politics. Now, granted, we are looking at this with 2024 hindsight, right? We're looking at this with 30 more years of Frank Miller existing, looking back at a work and trying to like parse what it means and kind of what he was doing and what he was
Right.
feeling and thinking at the time.
Well, when we were the age that they were creating this, like they were that age in the Cold War. So it's not that far left field, even in the mid 90s, to be like former communist, now big enemy. It's not even that. People still do it today.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And also too, to think that way and still consider yourself fairly liberal
yeah.
compared to the people
Yeah.
that came before you. And I think that that's like really important context. And I think one of the problems with existing in 2024 in a world where like media literacy is maybe at an all-time low, although I think that that's a thing that all old people say.
But also media access is at an all-time high, so there's more to have to parse.
True. That like I think sometimes we don't give people especially when they are semi-celebrities or celebrities in a certain sphere.
Right. Well known. Yeah, of course.
We do sort of like we take them at whatever is the thing put in front of us, and we don't fully contextualize it. Which is, part of the mission of this podcast is contextualizing things. I think that's really, really important.
And I don't think that Todd McFarlane comes off as like reactionary or like weirdly right-leaning as a result of this.
No.
Like you said, he didn't write this. Frank Miller wrote it. He's not going to tell Frank Miller how to write the story. I mean, maybe he suggested a plot or something, but he's not going to tell Frank Miller how to write Frank Miller's story any more than he wants anyone to tell him how to write his. I think that's part of his ethos. So I don't think that it's a reflection on like, and again, not everyone's work, people's work isn't their reality. That's an important distinction. When people start blurring that line themselves, creators of whatever media start blurring that line themselves and stating what their intent is and making, it's not a death of the artist argument. It is a context of the moment kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's important to always kind of pull those things in. The only time that it gets a little blurry, the most blurry, is when chaos magic is involved.
That's right.
Because sometimes if you do create art that is a sigil to yourself,
that's right,
by accident, you never know what can happen.
You don't.
If you know. Yeah. If you don't,
find
we're
out.
moving on.
Find out. That's the correct answer. Is if you don't find out, that's what they'd want.
Can we talk quickly about this Batman splash?
Yeah, let's talk about these 2 pages because there's a couple things to notice here. Go ahead.
Holy cape, Batman.
Yeah, no shit. It is very much Spawn's cape in Batman's like it is a Spawn style cape. And this is another one where Batman's eyes are like down by his jowls. Which is a very strange placement.
They're on his cheeks.
Yeah. He's a wall-eyed, that is Hammerhead Batman. On the other side, it's a cool splash page though, and I like that it's kind of a very much a Todd McFarlane Spawn splash page. We get the kind of meta moment picture in picture of the one talking head with the Batman logo on it, though we don't get what she says. It just says reports are flooding in, or I guess we are getting what she says. The caption is
yeah, it's her dialogue.
The news report. Yeah, talking about that.
It is fun. Yeah, it is very fun though that Frank uses Todd's talking head, which is
right. And good. She's saying that rumors have it that Batman has come to the Big Apple. So on the next page where it says we get the Spawn introduction, we get this gorgeous splash page of Spawn.
Good Spawn. That's a good Spawn.
Which I think it's interesting that the last Batman splash was a very Spawn-style Batman. This is a very mainstream Batman-style Spawn. I think it's great. We've got that big, really well-rendered, pointy Spawn, fingers, hand out front, cape going everywhere, chains flying. I say this a lot because I recognize a lot of this. This was a piece that was used widely in advertising.
How do you feel about the computer coloring here?
I think it works on this page because I think it's doing something specific. I think as we go throughout, it starts to negate some of the, black value that I think Todd is trying to put into his inks, like the heavy spotted blacks. It starts to kind of wear on them. Want to point out on this page next to Spawn, and I don't want to get into page by page here, but 2 kids trying to light Spawn on fire. Literally another direct exact plot point from the Houdini story.
Is that not also in the Redeemer arc too? Or sorry, anti-Spawn arc?
Was it an
No, you're right. Nope, it's
It's
again,
because
it's
the
in
kid
Houdini.
was
It's in
helping
Houdini.
build the nuke. It's the kid
Yeah,
who helped build
it's
the
in
nuke.
Houdini.
I think I'm onto something here. I think Todd was like, or Zakowski, take this plot, have this nerd write something about it. Sorry, I didn't mean to be disparaging with that. All respect.
No, sorry, call him a punk like Batman
punk,
does.
Exactly. Batman really loves throwing out like, you're a scum, you're a punk, you're a little nitwit, you're a twit.
But also too, that's only Frank's Batman.
Frank's Batman is a piece of shit. This is definitely like the goddamn Batman, like, you wash your own underpants, Robin. And that's why, like, you can almost read it in like Frank Miller crank voice, you know, like the whole time. I think he's going for a certain type of Spawn, or sorry, a certain type of Batman, but it sucks. I also want to say him constantly berating Spawn and calling him names gets a little uncomfortable the number of times he calls Spawn boy.
I guess
I know what it is. It's not, doesn't make it not uncomfortable.
That's fair.
It's Batman trying to be diminutive to Spawn because, you know, like he is to Robin and Frank Miller's goddamn Batman.
Yeah. Here's the thing that I think that Frank doesn't understand about Spawn is like his Spawn is kind of self-assured in his magicalness.
Yeah.
And that's not who Spawn is at this point.
No, although he's getting to be that way thanks to Harry Houdini in a parallel story. I mean, we have it down to Batman interrupting Spawn about to fuck up these kids' world. Like, just like Houdini did in that story. Spawn is like giving them a chance to get out of there before he kills them, and the kids are like, pull a gun and shoot Spawn. One of the kids pulls a gun and shoots Spawn, and Spawn lights them up with hellfire. Which, the funny part of this is Batman watches him do that, and then he can't believe how strong Spawn is when he tackles him.
When you meet Satan, say hello for me.
Pretty good.
Good panel.
Good panel. Could be better if this wasn't drawn like it's... If this wasn't colored, I mean, no offense to the colors, their quality, it's just the wrong tone. These could be so much darker.
Yeah.
Darker, scarier, more menacing. It's very bright. This is a feeling that will happen.
What's the gradient in the background? Is the gradient in the background supposed to be the fire?
I guess.
And then in that case, why is it pink to blue rather than like yellow to red or
the haze of the night and the fire and the other parts of?
Or is it because the middle of the page is so orangey that you need to balance it out? I don't know.
The point here is that Batman tackles Spawn. He's like, you must be Al, because he's been hanging around the alley that he tracked the dead person's head from. He realizes this must be the Al that everyone's talking about that has all the powers. They get into a fight. Batman.
By the way, this is a missed opportunity for a Paul Simon reference, right? Like, I really wanted... One, I don't like that Batman gets the jump on Spawn. Really? Yeah. Like, I don't love that. I would rather them meet and he says, you can call me Al.
Yeah, that's right. And then we could have a musical comic where you turn the page and it could have been a tie-in. Could have been a tie-in.
Saying,
I'm sure Paul Simon loves money.
Paul Spawnman.
Paul Simon is SoundCloud rap for boomers.
Sorry, I paused to let that linger for a little bit. I'm going to leave it in the recording too.
Yeah, good. That's true. I do like on this one part of the fight, Spawn and Batman commence it to fighting as heroes are wont to do when they're in a misunderstanding. I like we get the like batarangs versus chains moment.
Cool.
It's pretty cool. It's drawn fine. It's definitely like one of those moments you want to see. Spawn beats the living shit out of Batman. invoking only a small amount of his hellish power. One thing that happens throughout this comic is that Spawn will reference his powers and the depletion of them without ever showing the counter again.
This is again what I mean about Frank just not understanding what Spawn is, or just saying like, I'll write your comic, but I literally am not going to do any of the homework.
Yeah. So Spawn gets dosed with nerve gas, which winds up with him throwing up. But Batman escapes in this whirling cloud of gas. After getting his ass kicked, we get another one of those endings of a fight where it's really just all on Tom Orzechowski's shoulders to give this a bunch of frankly like Batman 66 style, like biff bam pow swack pock. That one's even got some polka dots in it. Like this is a very Batman 66 kind of moment, which is it's cute.
That's fine.
I don't mind that. Spawn pukes his guts out while Batman's recuperating, like his shoulders all out of socket. One thing that I like is that he says, Script says, all this is very painful, which is good. It keeps his mind off the humiliation. He keeps saying throughout this story, Spawn is holding back, calling him a punk for holding back and playing it fast and loose.
Which I guess is a little bit of the only thing that Frank does get about Spawn, is that Spawn doesn't fully understand his powers.
Right.
Here's a future thing, though, that makes this fight insane. We haven't reached this point in continuity. Spawn weighs 400 to 500 pounds. That's not a joke. That is a thing that will be mentioned in the narration in future issues. Anytime Spawn needs to be like moved by another character,
What is
they
this guy
can't
filled with bricks.
they can't drag him anywhere because he's too heavy. That means if he's just falling on
Batman's, oh yeah, of course. You know,
like
there's a little bit of plot motivation. Here's where the plot that Batman was experiencing and Spawn is experiencing collide, as another one of those big robots with the human head inside attacks him. Spawn, we get a big gun Spawn moment where he's shooting this thing's arm back
Good
at him
panel.
as a cannon. Pretty cool. Yeah, I like that one. And he gets connected. He sees that the human head that's powering this weird cyborg thing, it's another guy he knows. They talk, and the guy doesn't know where he is. He kind of dies, but Spawn connects it to the lady that he saw, that he sees on the TV, who is the former Soviet scientist, and it lays out who she is. She says, prepare to shed your poison bodies and become perfect servants of society, free from guilt and pain, free from choice. It lays out pretty much Frank Miller's opinion of what communism is.
Yeah.
Not that uncommon for the U.S. in this point, regardless of your politics, frankly.
Yeah, it still hasn't changed.
But Spawn recognizes her, and he says his voice, like music, hypnotizing, then like a thunderclap. Men screamed and died, and she was smiling. And she's looking very much like a concentration camp guard here as she's like experimenting on people. This page sucks. Like it sucks to read. It sucks to look at. The art looks stupid. Todd's trying to do a thing where Spawn's cape is flaying out, and you can see the woman like sort of formed in his cape, and it just doesn't work.
Looks bad. I think again it's a coloring thing.
Honestly, the inking on this page sucks too. This looks like a page that Todd rushed through, if I'm being honest.
I'll argue that also. I don't know that Frank Miller went full script here, but
who knows? It could have been plotting by Todd.
Even the plotting then probably feels like a little abstract, and so if it was just like rough plots, and Todd was like, "What do I draw here?"
It just winds up being an ugly page, especially compared to the one next to it that's very simple and effective. Got a very Frank Miller looking Batman in silhouette up on the top, with that round Batman symbol, kind of telling you this is the Dark Knight Batman, as we discussed up front. He's taping himself up again, like that iconic Frank Miller image, and then we get this very like Batwing Gothic cape flitting out over the city with the bat signal.
My favorite Batman, I think, in the whole issue is on the next page, though,
where he's leaping down into the light.
No, it's the one in the dark. One of
Oh,
him in the dark on
yeah.
the very same page.
Yes, you're right.
It's so
Yes.
cool.
That is a cool one. And we get some of that very cool kind of chiaroscuro rendering
Yeah.
by Todd McFarlane, where you're really just seeing the backlit silhouette of his cape in the darkness. Very much effective. Very kind of, that's what you want to see from Batman, is his dark in the shadows, inky,
Especially in
pulpy.
this book where we've been kind of complaining about the computer coloring taking away the darkness of the blacks. And it happens in that one of him leaping. I'm like, ugh, too much rendering.
Yeah.
Like, simplify. I should not be able to count his muscles.
It's not as interesting as that panel next to it. What's happening here, though, is that the bat signal has been lit by the former Soviet scientist, head of the, Free the World or whatever it is, Hope for the World. I can't even remember. Doesn't even
Heal the
matter.
world.
Heal the World. Thank you. Nadia Vladova, or Margaret Love, we learn.
Great.
She's asking Batman for help since he's in New York to track down Spawn, who she blames for busting up her mission. Or threatening her mission because of the cyborg fight. One thing we forgot to mention at the top is that in that first cyborg that Batman fought, he took this gauntlet off of it that sort of had all this like strength power, and he gave it to Alfred to file away. That comes up in the next part because Batman's like, hell yeah, I'll do your bidding, madam. Whatever you want.
Very cool thing that Batman always does is like work for other people. So
yeah, he's standing here in the shadows. And in that very cool panel we talked about, he says, he will be stopped, Doctor. He won't get anywhere near your ship.
This leads to another Batman Spawn fight. Now Batman is powered up with the gauntlet, not unlike how Batman has to get powered up against Superman at the end of Dark Knight Returns.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, so I did pull up Wizard 32, where there's a big interview with everybody involved in the Batman Spawn crossovers that were happening. So the creative team of Batman, Spawn, War Devil, and also Todd and Frank. And they do mention, or Frank mentions, that he wrote Year One and he wrote Return. So he wrote Young Batman, he wrote Old Batman, and he kind of considers those to be of a piece. But he never got to write like Batman at the height of his physical prowess, and that he considers like this version of Batman to be that version of Batman.
That makes sense. And especially when you consider that that's how he wrote him in All-Star.
Yeah, and which would be years after this.
Years after this, so an opportunity he hadn't had yet.
Right. So I kind of do like the gauntlet as like the precursor to the pneumatically powered suit.
It's fine.
That he uses in Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
But again, it does feel a little bit like Frank Miller covering himself.
Yeah, it feels like doing the
covering
hits.
Playing the hits like.
It's like when they reboot a movie, and now, especially that it's a trope in its own, they're going to do all the hits that they did in the first one. Like if you reboot Ghostbusters, they're going to probably reference a lot of the same jokes. You
mean like the Ghostbusters movie that comes out today as we're recording?
I've never heard of it. No, actually, my coworker who loves Ghostbusters saw it, and she actually loved it. So
if we can go on a Ghostbuster tangent for a second,
can we?
What's the deal with Ghostbusters? I don't get it.
Oh, honestly, first movie's fine. I'm not really into the whole franchise thing.
That's
you know what it is. Too. Honestly, you know what it is. This is Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters, I think, is pretty charming. It all happened because Dan Akroyd loves ghosts. Dan Akroyd is really into the paranormal and high strangeness and stuff like that, and he wanted to make a comedy about it. And that's why the first one really works a lot of the time, because it's kind of a labor of love of all these special interests for Autistic King Dan Akroyd. Shout out, we love you.
Nope, I don't. I actually hate Dan Akroyd.
Wow, you're
know why? Here's why. My girlfriend
Dan Akroyd.
No, I'm not even mid. I think I actively hate Dan Akroyd.
Let's explain.
Have you ever watched Nothing But Trouble?
Oh, I've seen it, buddy. I've seen it so many times. It's wretched.
I hate that movie.
It's wretched.
I hate that movie. That's an affront to God. That film. Tupac's first on-screen role.
Yes.
But
shout out
it
to the
is.
Digital Underground, Humpty Hump.
But that
I have
movie,
several facts about Humpty Hump we could discuss to a beat later.
that movie is. It hurt to watch it.
It's a bonkers. It's a wild
and
movie.
I think I don't like anything about who Dan Akroyd chooses to be.
Well, you know what, Pierce, I can't tell you how to feel. I can't tell you to feel differently about Nothing But Trouble, but I think Ghostbusters, as a creation of his love of spiritualism, is.
I don't. Well, all I know about Ghostbusters is that he
Houdini
really wants to
connection.
get blown by a ghost. Like that's what my main takeaway. And I'm like,
I'm gonna be honest,
I don't
Pierce,
think
I admire movies that will go there. It beat Watchmen to the screen. It beat Watchmen to the punch, talking about how sometimes our heroes have feet of perverted clay. Sometimes they want to fuck their ghosts. I think that's
Spawn
what's up with
Ghostbusters crossover. Does it work? There's not really ghosts. It
kind of does though. Like you can have them dispel a demon. Like
there's not really.
He's
ghosts.
kind of a ghost. He's undead, Pierce.
I guess he is made of psychoplasm,
necroplasm, psychoplasm. Hey, don't
call me Bill Murray.
Yeah, Bill Murray of all people.
Call me Dan Akroyd.
Yeah, he's gonna want to talk to you. He's gonna want to talk to Pierce. Pierce, this is Dan Akroyd. I just wanted to tell you that I didn't appreciate the way you were discussing my interest in creating bad movies. Anyway, speaking of arguably better or parallel art, this splash page of Batman with the gauntlet on is pretty cool. Really classic Todd McFarlane uses of hands, where Spawn's hands are almost like when a director is like framing a shot and they're kind of wrapping around Batman as he's jumping towards him. Batman jumps in, starts pummeling Spawn with the power of the gauntlet. I'm not exactly sure if it powers up his whole body or just it kind of implies that it makes him more tough.
Hey,
too.
George, does it matter?
It doesn't, not to me.
It's kind of like the secret stuff in Space Jam. Like it makes Batman believe in himself more or whatever, so he can fight Spawn.
The dialogue on this one page where they're tussling back and forth, Spawn's leaping on Batman, knocking him backwards, is pretty emblematic of most of the dialogue shared between Spawn and Batman. Spawn says, "Break you in half. I'll break you in half." And Batman says, "Sloppy fighter, stupid fighter, no discipline." And Spawn says, "Talking trash. You're talking trash. It won't help you." And Batman says again, "No discipline, stupid fighter, stupid punk."
Do you think Frank was like placeholder?
You can really read.
I'll fix it.
It really reads like. You've seen Spaceballs?
Yeah, of course.
You know the scene in Spaceballs where Darth Helmet is playing with his toys?
Yeah.
And he's like being the princess and himself. He's like, "No, princess." And she's like, "Oh." This really reads like Frank Miller sitting there with a Batman action figure and a Spawn action figure going, "Oh, stupid punk. No discipline. You're talking trash. You're no disciplined fighter." It also reads like the ending comments that World Warriors make when they beat you in Street Fighter. Stupid, no discipline punk. So they fight each other. It's happening.
It's fine. There's a lot of Tom Warzakowski having a lot of fun, probably, but maybe doing more than the panels are asking for, where he uses four sound effects for just Batman kicking Spawn.
He puts
crunk, snat, tatch, clock, cram.
He puts chud in there twice on the previous page. Yeah, I do like honestly, I want to say I do like the bottom couple panels on the page where they've kicked the smat and tatch out of each other.
Too. Also, that's the Greg Capullo of it all too.
Yes, absolutely a Greg Capullo Batman face there. His best rendering of Batman besides that Sam Keith one.
Yep.
Sam Keith-esque one, or Kelly Jones-esque Batman earlier, that was just a really interesting side thing. This is really where he seems like he knows what Batman's face and his cowl looks like.
Yeah.
So,
I really dig it. I do also love that Batman's arm just got fucking swole as hell
yeah,
at some point.
it sure did. It really did.
But then the computer on the very next page, the top of the very next page, like the computer coloring really does him dirty again.
It
where I'm
somehow
just
works
like,
better on the previous page, and on this one, yeah, it just starts to get muddy. It's a very muddy page where the cyborgs are kicking the shit out of Batman now.
Based on the fact that we know that like 30 people are working on the coloring, I have to chalk this up to just somebody got assigned this page and didn't understand.
Christ Wolf had other shit to do that day.
Or maybe I'm you know what? I'm gonna give Christ Wolf the one we like.
Yeah. Oh, I said they might have had other shit to do that day. No, yeah, but whatever. And also, we don't know how all the optics broke up the duties, what they exactly were doing, who was working on what. We know this was on a deadline, so there's a great chance a lot of them were throwing in on this. So, okay. Now the cyborgs intervene. They kick the shit out of Batman, and he dies in Spawn's arms. But Spawn, for the first time, and I don't know if he does this again for a while.
We'll find out.
Uses his magic to fully resurrect Batman from the moment of his death.
Which is crazy.
Canonically, this is very much...
Dark Knight Returns can't happen
without Spawn.
If Spawn doesn't resurrect Batman now.
Fucking Spawn. That's what these people need to realize. These movie executives need to understand is that technically, narratively, that movie, that concept that they love so much, Dark Knight Returns, impossible without Spawn. They need to give credit where it's due. Turn back to the original. Okay.
I got a question. Do you like these pages? I think they're not good.
I think the computer coloring's kind of cool here. I like that it's a bluish green instead of a like greenish green.
I think the one where we get the Spawn and Batman heads like back to back is where it's like great.
Yeah, the bloods on this
doing too much.
I actually don't mind it. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and say I kind of like the blood with the Kirby crackle in it. It's a little more interesting than a lot of the other stuff Todd's done in this issue.
I don't like these angry chihuahuas in the middle of that page.
The weird bats. Yeah. That one little bit where Spawn and Batman are dripping together down the page, and Spawn is blood and Batman is kind of dripping out of Kirby Crackle. I like that. I'm a sucker for a Kirby Crackle.
But I love this Batman. Like when their heads are back to back, I love this Batman.
I like it better than the sort of mournful Spawn on the other side, which is not bad, but
I kind of like that Spawn too, but I love this Batman.
This feels like what you want to see from a Todd McFarlane Batman.
Yeah, it like when they let him cartoon.
Yeah,
it's great. I mean, you know, you brought up Adam West before, and there is a bit of an aspect of it. He's got the eyebrows here too. Again,
yeah.
When his face gets blacked out like that, it actually loses all the personality of the stuff that I love about Todd's art. Yeah. And the stuff I love about Todd's art are like the weird proportions and like the weird kind of cartoon. Like people don't look like this, but they do look exactly like this.
When you look at that page before, where he does the same thing he kind of does with Spawn's cowl, with Batman's cowl, the part where they're dripping, the Batman head on the right side of the page, he's got those wrinkles on his forehead. His eyes are kind of, if that, you could actually see the bottom half of Bruce Wayne's face.
That would be
so much more effective, that whole thing.
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed. So what's happening on these two pages that Pierce and I are kind of just discussing is this sort of psychic tete-a-tete between Batman and Spawn, as Spawn is resurrecting Batman.
Yeah.
They're coming to understand a little bit of what each other is about. Spawn is learning a little bit about Batman's tragic backstory, which he makes fun of a little bit, calling him a guy with daddy issues, I think. Batman learns that Spawn was a contract killer, which he rejects outright. I actually like that characterization of Batman.
Good.
The best of any of this issue, him just being like, "You're a fucking monster, dude. You killed so many people." Like, that's how you would want Batman to react to like a Spawn or a Punisher or another world famous international beloved assassin like
Yeah.
Kyle. But nonetheless, they come to understand that they're both on the same side, and moreover, Batman learns from Spawn's memories of being hired to kill Russian lady, I am Russian
Margaret
lady
Love.
bitch, Margaret Love, Nadia, whatever generic Russian name that Frank Miller probably came up with while he was raging, is trying to mind control all the world's leaders who she's entertaining at her Heal the World Center as they speak.
Yeah, and then we get the
So-
coolest fucking double page splash.
The Batman Spawn. I want to say, though,
Ah.
hate the faces on both of them.
Okay, hold on. So, love the face on Spawn. I love his. I've said this
You know
before.
what?
I love the protruded lower
I
lip.
actually do like that. The more I look
It's my
at
favorite thing.
I will say that one where his the shape on his mask curls over his forehead, totally out of place. Wouldn't be a Todd McFarlane drawing of one side of Spawn's face if he didn't fuck up trying to show that he has another side of his face. But that's part of what's charming. You know, I have a lot of memories of sitting and drawing Spawn when I was like 12, 13 years old. And I definitely did that a lot. Also, kind of a very Venom-y thing.
Yeah. I will say I hate the coloring on Batman. It's everything that I loved about the other close-up of his face, the nice kind of textured rendering.
Yeah. Not great.
I get that they're like leaping into the moonlight or whatever, but sucks.
It looks like
But overall,
the way Batman's
pretty cool.
face is here. It looks like, and some artists I'm sure will be able to relate to this, when you're drawing something and you accidentally draw your way all the way over to like the full edge of the page, but you're still trying to not have Batman's face go off the page. It looks like that, although there is space there. So, but I do like the ropes and the chains and their capes interacting together.
Cool.
It's a pretty dope splash page. Feet first is what it is, very strongly. But you know, yeah, it's a great splash page and probably the one that you'd want the poster of.
Definitely. After this, the book kind of it flounders to an ending, I think.
It rushes through the whole. It's rushing to the end of its story. They're all on this cruise ship. The Heal the World Foundation is hosting all these world leaders. In the champagne, there are drugs that make them super suggestible, and the Margaret Love, much like Dr. Faustus of Captain America villainy, is able to start warping them to her sick, twisted communist views through the power of suggestion.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Batman and Spawn are able to interrupt. They fight their way through the cruise ship, busting up all these robots. All the while, they're talking psychically, and Batman is still chastising Spawn, telling him he's too loud, being like, "You go in and make a noise. I'll do what I do best." It really, I just cannot read this in anything but Frank Miller's own like voice. And it sounds like it was dictated. Like it just really reads like that.
And a missile gets fired and there's a nuke and it's headed straight for the center of New York and they got to do something. And Batman, there's nothing else he can do. And so Spawn teleports them
we get the
onto the bomb.
We get the shorthand here. Yeah, Margaret Love, in the moment of her defeat, launches a nuke. It's the last act she can do. We get this moment where we've gone from like 5 captions describing the process of Spawn teleporting to saying teleportation. It's the worst.
Yeah.
Which I like that. So they teleport out of the bomb, Cap and Bucky style. Batman, who I love this bumper sticker here. Genius at work. Is what's on Batman's coffee mug. Batman's on the back of the bomb. He cracks open a panel. He says, "Genius at work." A mind so brilliant it might have revolutionized the field of physics. Hands so skillful they could have served a concert pianist or a safecracker.
You know what it reads
Batman.
like? It reads like my dad is cooler than your dad.
Batman, detective, vigilante, savior. Honestly, this bit of caption, what it really sounds like to me is fucking wizard people. I am a detective, a vigilante, a savior. And so
I'm Harry fucking Potter.
the only canonical Harry Potter story, as far as I'm concerned, written by a better person than Joan.
Agreed.
So Batman disables the nuke and he's like, Al, get us out of here. And they teleport out as the bomb crashes into the New York harbor.
Yeah, into the East River.
Into the East River,
and
yes.
The city is saved.
The New York harbor is where it crashes. Is what was written by someone who's never been to New York, probably. I've been there a lot. The East River, which means that there's just a fucking warhead in the East River.
Hanging out. Bring it back now, Todd.
Now's the time. It would be sick. Want to point out the coloring on the two teleportation effects that we can see side by side, wildly different. I kind of like the teal color there. That is a color that is actually also basically the exact color of my hair, come to think of it.
Oh, yeah.
I loved that color for like energy effects when I was a kid. And I had colored pencils. I would always draw like green lightning and shit like that. Anyway, just loved drawing Spawn shit when I was a kid. And I copied a lot of stuff I saw in those comics. So seeing that is bringing back nostalgia, but it's also reminding me that there is definitely a solid line between some of the different colorists who work in this book.
Yeah. This kind of final sort of denouement epilogue of the issue. I do like Spawn and Batman sort of face-off thing. I love the "We'll meet again" panel.
Yeah, basically Batman is dressing down Spawn. He says, your methods are revolting. Your disrespect for human life is detestable. Your lack of discipline is nothing short of embarrassing. We'll meet again. Which is pretty cool. I mean, canonically they did. And, I guess that happened somewhere in some universe.
A few times. They actually just had another crossover.
Yeah, they did
recently,
back in like 2019 or 2020, I think. Shortly after Todd McFarlane started doing all those DC toys. I like the coloring on the page where they're on the missile. That's a pretty good. The blues in Batman's cape are very, I don't know.
I think Spawn's face looks goofy though.
Yeah.
He has such a cool mask. Just wear your mask.
And it's kind of on and off in some of these panels where like
it doesn't make any
facing off. It's very MCU in a weird way where like we want to show Tom Holland's face so you know it's him and not some 14-year-old stunt actor in the costume at all times. So Batman leaves Spawn a parting gift. Spawn basically is like, shut up, old man. Why don't you be cool to me? We just saved the city. It would be sick if you were nice. It would be a chill way to be cool. And Spawn says, what do you say we just bury the hatchet? And Batman says, bury this. And hurls the batarang.
And then we get a good splash page of a batarang right in the middle of Spawn's forehead. And the end.
And this will lead to the shoelace tied up in the middle.
Yeah.
I love that. It makes it much more interesting when Todd draws Spawn's face without a mask.
Yeah, I agree. I love shoelace face.
Also kind of the iconic one for the time period. They did put it on a lot of toys. So yeah, we breezed through a lot of that, and I think it was probably kind of what it deserves. It's a very, very airy plot. Honestly, if you really want to dig deeper into it, just go back and re-listen to the Harry Houdini episode. Excuse me.
Almost exactly the same.
It just rereading it now and going back through it just seriously reinforced my belief that Todd had Orzechowski transfer the plot onto a comic
as just like a failsafe.
And I wonder where they got the other guy, because they had to have been like, we got to find a guy who can be in Spawn's world who's not Batman.
Yeah.
And they came up with Harry Houdini.
I mean, judging from his LinkedIn, he just kind of worked around them.
Maybe they were like, we need an idea for this. And he was like, I got one.
I love Harry Houdini. Let's
Harry
do
Houdini. How about that? And they were like, great. It could be. It could be. That would be so interesting to learn more about. And again, as I said up front, I'm not even knocking that. I think that's kind of interesting and kind of cool, like a fun little
it. I think it's kind of cool.
comics work a certain way, and it's a little bit of how the sausage is made in a way that makes it taste a little more interesting.
Yeah. And I think too, at this point, what is being done here, yes, we'd had Marvel DC crossovers before, but to have a brand new character get to cross over with DC so early, and especially with Batman so early in its kind of run is notable.
And it's once again putting Spawn on the same level as Batman, as this iconic level of character. So
Absolutely.
I think interesting to have read as an adult. Never read as a kid. I only saw like pages from it and stuff. For whatever reason,
I just knew about it.
I knew about it.
Yeah.
Never was one of the ones I bought. Honestly, when I was young, we discussed this in some point before. A lot of my comic choices were based on how many characters were on the cover or like which characters, because I didn't get a lot of comics. This one, I think if I had read it at 13, I probably would have felt great about it.
Especially if I didn't read the Harry Houdini arc.
Yeah.
Although I don't know. Yeah, although I don't know that if as a kid, if I was reading these monthly, I would even clock it.
Maybe that's why they put it so far out, so that people wouldn't notice exactly how close it was.
That's maybe the other thing, right? Maybe put them out of order on purpose.
Maybe. I mean, we're
Who
just theorizing.
We're just asking questions.
I'm just saying there's questions.
Just asking.
just
Well,
saying there's
that was the
questions.
first arc.
That's right. And there still are, though, like my wife and what is my wife doing and where is my wife?
Yeah. Once again, this arc is not interested in the cosmology of Spawn at all.
Yeah.
At all. And that's fine, I guess, because it's a crossover. It's kind of an event book.
Yeah.
For Spawn.
You don't want to dig too deep. Honestly, it would not have been served better by digging deep into like some of that shit. Margaret Love is one of aside from Angels, like 2 women who have spoken in Spawn at this point that weren't also being attacked. Like you only get damsels. Like I think in the first arc there was like only 1 or 2 women, and they were all women Spawn was saving.
They're being menaced.
Or Wanda gets characterization. We talked about it.
Cyan.
And Cyan, not a woman, a young girl.
Yeah.
But not a lot of women in Spawn. Don't get a lot of chances to talk.
Honestly, much like our Spotify podcast analytics.
Yeah, you showed me that, and that was the least surprising thing I've ever seen in my life. Which is funny because I don't think I'm certainly not a man, and I listen to it. But
hey, listeners, dudes rock.
Dudes rock. Share this with your girlfriends too. Listen, they're gonna love hearing 2 non-binary trans people go on in depth about Spawn fighting Mario cyborgs.
My partner will not watch X-Men 97 with me. I know she's listening. She'll listen to this, I guess, when this comes out, but she will listen to my Spawn podcast. It's all relationships are about balance.
It's about that give and take. Take the good, take the bad, take them both, and there you have Spawn Batman by Frank Miller and Todd McFarlane. A comic book, one of the comic books of all time.
One of the comic books of all time for sure. I think it does rank, I don't know, it kind of like in terms of what we've gone through at this point, and we're not trying to do a ranking of everything, but I don't know, it's somewhere around Payback, right? It's somewhere around the Houdini. It's kind of the same as the Houdini arc, because it kind of hits me the same as that,
There's no letters page in this.
Oh, yeah?
But there's no letters page, but there are several pinups actually in the back of this. There's one. I don't know who this one's actually by. I wonder if it's credited in the front. It's maybe not. The signature is CC93, and I can't figure out who that is. And I
probably CC Beck, obviously.
Yeah, that's who it was. They got him. They got CC. I thought someone will point out who that was, and I'll feel. I'll feel probably it was probably Chris Claremont. That's probably what that is, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
I will say the coolest art in this entire fucking comic is the final page, which is a drawing of Batman and Spawn by Todd and Frank Miller. And seeing Todd's best Spawn next to Frank Miller's honestly a very fucking kick-ass Batman crushes.
Oh, that's the cover of Wizard number 32.
Oh, is it? Okay,
It
great.
is.
I don't have that in front of me, but
that's kind of fun.
crushes. That is Frank Miller's Batman and Todd McFarlane's Spawn, and that looks sick. Imagine if you had a Batman of that caliber, though. I mean, that's one of my favorite Frank Miller Batmans I've seen. Just really works in this context.
There's something to be said for maybe instead of it being just Frank drawing or Frank writing and Todd drawing, maybe Batman Spawn should have been Todd writing and Frank and Todd jamming.
Yeah, honestly, it could have been interesting.
What a crazy
I wonder
thing.
if they had had more time to do it. Maybe that could have been possible.
Yeah.
But, there you have it. Spawn Batman #1, the first Spawn crossover outside of Image. And
this one is Image published.
Sorry, with a character from outside of Image.
No, because we got Cerebus.
You're right. How could I forget? God, cut this out. Spawn's first superhero crossover with a character from outside of Image. I'll qualify that down to being right.
There you go. You've never been wrong.
Well, technically that's true. An interesting artifact, but honestly, don't hurt yourself trying to find it. You can get it for about $10 used on eBay.
I ordered mine, but it never came.
Wow, well.
I gotta start a thing.
Fuck them.
So
go on record.
All right. Our next arc is gonna be The Hunt. We're gonna see the return of Overt Kill. We're going to see some other characters pop up and try to fight Spawn and because they're looking for him. Oh, one more thing about Batman Spawn. The crossover I want way more than Batman Spawn. Sam and Twitch and Commissioner Gordon.
Oh, that'd be sick.
It'd actually be really good, and I want Francesco Francavilla to draw it.
Yeah, I do.
And
too.
You know what? We spoke about him earlier. I would love for Scott Snyder to write it.
Sure.
Because I really loved their Commissioner Gordon backups during New 52 Batman, or was it right before New 52?
I think it was right before New 52.
It was in Detective Comics. During
the Black Mirror.
During the Black Mirror, yeah. That shit slammed. Also, I would be fine with Brian Michael Bendis coming back to do some noir shit.
So
that'd be really cool.
$3.95 the cover price American, $5.35 Canadian. You can barely get a regular comic
for that price, and that's 56 pages.
Yeah. So times they have a change. Anyway, that's it for this episode.
Yeah, this has been Spawnography. You can follow us on X, Blue Sky, Instagram. We're at Spawnography or at Spawnography Pod. You can listen to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Libsyn, Link. Where else? Where else do they post podcasts?
Apple,
YouTube.
YouTube, any place.
Yeah. Please rate, review, subscribe. Means a lot. Share it with other Spawn fans. There are dozens of us. Thank you also. Thank you to George for our theme song.
You're very welcome.
Thank you to me for editing.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you to Blake Whitlock for the Spawn reading order, which is what we use to kind of go through these things. We will be covering. I can say that we'll be covering everything that's on the Spawn reading order. You can just Google it. It's online. Blake takes care of this with every new issue of Spawn that comes out or miniseries or whatnot, and parses it all and figures out where it fits in continuity. We'll cover everything that's in black and in red. We will not cover anything that's in gray. We will cover occasional things that are in green. You'll know what that means if you look at it. It's color coded. It's really amazing. It's a great resource. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, give yourselves a round of applause.
Until next time, Hellspawn.
Yeah, for Todd so loved the world,
he gave his only begotten Spawn.
This is Spawnography. Bye.
Bye.
Spike!